Assalamu alaikum, RUH family. I hope you guys are all doing well, inshallah, and are having a good start to your new year. I can't believe it's already February. Time is just going by so fast. But I just pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts barakah in our time, and that we use it in a way that is pleasing to Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm really excited to share this week's episode with you guys. We dive deep into a discussion on Sufism, Tasawwuf, Ihsan, also known as Islamic spirituality. As you know, this podcast is really about spirituality and our journey to spirituality, because we are all spiritual beings having a human experience. And so this podcast is really all about inviting guests and talking about those experiences that they've had, and how do we strengthen our connection with our Creator, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this week I invited Sanura Scott, who you may be familiar with. She is on Instagram and on TikTok, and she is known as Miss Numinous on there. She has great content, educational content, and I'm very inspired by her. And so it was an honor to have her on and to learn more about her journey. And so I hope you enjoyed this episode and you learned something new. Please follow, like, and subscribe on our YouTube page, at RUH platform, on Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And if you're new here, I'd like to say welcome and thank you so much for joining our community here. I hope this place is a beneficial place for you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon our most beloved Prophet and his family and companions. Today I would like to welcome an honorable guest. We've been trying to get her on for quite some time, and finally we found a time that works for both of us, so alhamdulillah. Her name is Sanura. Sanura is also known as Miss Numinous, who is a Muslim revert and began her journey to Islam nearly 5 years ago. She grew up in downtown Toronto, Canada, and has lived there ever since. She studied psychology, mental health, and addictions, and obtained her master's degree in social and public policy in 2021. Sanura has found a passion in Islam, and more specifically, the science of Tasawwuf and Sufism. She has been sharing her learnings and journeys with others for about 2 years on Instagram and TikTok, and is actively invested in supporting Muslims to rediscover the essence of Islam, and aims to bridge the gap between spiritual development and mental health and wellness. Welcome, Sanura. I'm so glad you're finally on Spill the RUH.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here as well. I'm very excited.
Me too. So tell me a little bit more of your journey to Islam.
Yeah, so I always find it so hard to pinpoint when I felt like, okay, let me look into Islam, but as far as I can remember, it was kind of a series of small things that just piqued my curiosity. I just remember at one point, randomly feeling like, okay, I want to look into spirituality and religion. Because as a kid, I remember reading, this is very odd, but I remember reading a shortened version of the Bible, and my whole family was making fun of me, and because they weren't religious. So I just remember just being interested in history and religions, and I found it mysterious. So I think that kind of planted the seed for me. And then I was on YouTube a lot the past few years, just like anyone else, probably the last decade.
Yeah.
And watching YouTube videos, not making them. And I remember coming across a YouTuber who, I think she's Australian or British, but she was a revert. And I thought that was so bizarre because she's obviously not from a culture that's predominantly Muslim. So I was like, okay, this is weird. And she made a video about reverting and just information about Islam. So that kind of just opened my mind fully. And then after that, it felt like I was meeting Muslims a lot more, or maybe I was more aware of Muslims around me. And people were giving me really good knowledge, books to read. Because when you tell someone, oh, I'm interested in Islam, they get so excited, right?
Yeah.
And they want to
Yeah.
give you resources.
Right.
So I started noticing that. And I think a different YouTuber at one point shared a link to this PDF about Islam and the scientific miracles in Islam, and that just did it for me. I was like, okay, this is amazing, because I always thought religion and science couldn't coexist. So yeah, I read that, I was shocked, and then I really just started questioning my belief system and the fact that I was so kind of confused about like my purpose in life. And yeah, I decided to buy a Quran. I ordered it on Amazon, not the best, but anyways. um, and then I started reading it. And
Yeah.
from that point on, I feel like it's so hard, unless you're very much like, no, this is not it for me. It's so hard to turn away once you've started reading it. Like, it's such a captivating um, book. And I just, yeah, I don't have any words really to describe like how I felt. It just felt like I didn't even need to read the whole thing to know this was the religion for me. But it really required reprogramming my pre-existing kind of beliefs about religion in general, and going in with like an open mind.
Hmm. Wow. Was there a particular verse in the Quran that stuck out to you?
Um, I think so I know in the Quran there's a lot of verses that kind of repeat themselves. So I felt like those are the ones that stuck with me, like the ones about remembrance, and that stuff really stuck with me. And the way I kind of explored specific verses is that I kind of did research on all the um how do you say it, controversial verses or
Hmm.
parts of the Quran. So the verses about women, specific, yeah, honestly, those are the main ones I can think of.
Yeah.
Like the verses about women,
Yeah.
there was so much stuff. I was like, okay, let me look into all the controversial things first. That's what I did. And um, I actually really enjoyed those verses I read about women. And after doing research and understanding context and stuff, I really was like, okay, wow, this is completely different to how I view myself as a woman. The whole trend of feminine, masculine energy that's now coming out, like
Yeah.
this has been a thing.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so I think those are verses I really enjoyed, but all the verses that repeat themselves there's something about them, and I wish I understood more like the logic behind why they repeat themselves in that way, and like where they're placed. That's very interesting to me. But yeah, I think it's really the remembrance and the fact that like the verses that talk about God always being with you, that kind of stuff. The stuff that
Mm.
makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh wow, subhanallah. Do you remember that? I mean, I'm sure you do, and if you're willing to share, but do you remember that specific moment where you just knew, like, no, this is it. I'm becoming Muslim, or I've always been Muslim. Like, what was that moment like?
Um, I know I started feeling like that before, like long before I actually decided to convert. So I honestly felt like, this is weird, but a new person.
Mm.
Like the way I was showing up in the world, I was dealing with like even before I converted, like I said, I was dealing with problems very differently. Like my thought process was changing, and that was like, okay, wow, this is pretty serious. Like I have to take this feeling seriously, and there's something more that is being asked of me in a way, if that makes any sense.
Hmm. Hmm.
um so I think it was when I noticed like, okay, challenges were coming, and I was thinking about them in a completely different way that I had never thought of them in the past, like without that notion of there being a creator. Because before that, I don't know if I was agnostic. I wouldn't say I was fully atheist. It was kind of like this,
Hmm.
so up and down. Um, but yeah, I think that's the moment, I realized, okay, there's more to life than just humans and how we treat each other and like how we impact each other. There's more. It's not just like we don't have to just rely on other humans for our well-being,
Mhm,
and be
mhm,
affected by those situations, those interpersonal conflicts and situations. Like
mhm.
there's so much more to life.
SubhanAllah. And you mentioned that your family is not really religious. So what was it like growing up as a child?
It was pretty random to be honest. Like
Mhm,
I was exposed to different religions. I had a couple babysitters that were Jehovah's Witnesses. So I understood what religion was. Um, and we were like culturally Christian, if that
mhm,
makes sense.
mhm,
Um, so we celebrated all that, but we didn't like the concept of a creator was like laughable to some people in my family. Like they couldn't, it's like, why would you even believe that? It
mhm.
didn't make sense to them. So I think that's why when I was curious even as a young child, it came as like a weird thing to them because they were probably wondering where did this interest come from. My family in Jamaica, they are quite religious. So I got most of my exposure to Christianity from them. And I was just hearing stories and stuff, and I just never believed the stories that they would tell me. So I kind of shut it off. Uh, but growing up, yeah, I wouldn't say confusing because it's not that extreme, but
Mhm.
definitely no kind of specific guidance when it comes to spirituality or religion. Um, Mind you, my mom is quite a spiritual person.
Mhm.
So I think she just hadn't fully tapped into it, or maybe she didn't want to influence me. I'm not sure. We've never had that conversation, but she's definitely very, very spiritual, especially now. So we have more in common and things to talk about now, but in the past, a little bit less.
Wow. How do you feel when people say, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious?
Uh, Honestly, sometimes it's a pet peeve of mine. Like I have to regulate myself when I hear things like that because I just don't understand where people are getting their information from and where they think this knowledge comes from. So where's the root? Like that to me will always be a question for people who say they're spiritual and not religious. I do understand why they would say that. Like
Mm,
I get that religion has been a tool for oppression
yeah.
in throughout history. Um, but I wish people could look beyond that when it comes to religion and just see that religion is just another form of spirituality. I also find that people who say they're spiritual and not religious are trying to stay in their comfort zone
Hmm.
and create something that works for them so that they don't have to change a lot about their beliefs and their life, their behaviors and habits and things like that. So I think it's more of a comfort thing for humans than anything else. Like they want that like my friend always says this, like the a la carte approach to religion or spirituality, where they're deciding what they want to use
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
leaving the things that maybe are a bit controversial or don't go with the current mainstream way of doing things. So I think it's better to be spiritual than nothing for sure. But if we get into the nitty gritty of it, I think yeah, it just doesn't make that much sense to me because even though I've talked to people who are spiritual and not religious, they would never convert to any religions. And sometimes I find that they're a bit lost still in terms of making sense of their own beliefs. So yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
would say.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, I have like friends in college or colleagues, classmates. I mean, a lot of them, I've heard that from a lot of them saying that, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious, and it comes from that same thing, just they're like, I don't believe in organized religion. I mean, again, it's
Yes.
with your experience as well with the religion and, whatever religion it is. And so, yeah, I would agree with a lot with what you're saying, and I just found it so interesting. But when Muslims say that, it's like, whoa, okay, well, Islam is it's just
Right.
it's the whole thing. It's the entire package. But I guess it comes down to understanding and what your experience is and how you've been raised and all of that entire context. But I always thought that was so interesting. So tell me a little bit more about, like, how did you come across Tasawwuf or Hassan or Sufism, and what was it that kind of brought you more closer to it and your interest in it?
Yeah. So I don't understand why it's so separate from Islam, like why it's such a separate concept. Because when I started discovering, like my reason for trying to discover a religion was because of what people would call tasawwuf. You get what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's I was looking for something. I wasn't looking for rules to follow. I was looking for something to give meaning and purpose to my life and to understand like those existential questions, like why am I here? What am I supposed to do? Like what is beyond this veil? Things like that. So I can't really pinpoint when I first got interested in Sufism because I feel like it was from the jump. I just didn't put a word to it or didn't know what it was until I read that was it Secrets of Divine Love? One of those books that
Mhm.
is very popular.
By
Uh,
Ehala.
yes, yes. I
Yeah.
think that's when I first heard the term, and I
hmm
was like, okay, okay, this is cool. This
This
makes
is
sense.
it. This
And
is what I've been looking
yeah,
for.
yes. And I was like, okay, I know I've heard about Rumi, didn't even know he was Muslim because that's a whole other
Oh yeah, that's a
conversation.
whole other conversation.
But yeah, I think that's what really put a word to what I thought was Islam, period. Um,
Mhm.
so and then I started gravitating towards people online or on YouTube who would use that term. And I started learning so much about what tasawwuf really means. And I didn't even realize there were people that thought it was a bad thing until I got on TikTok. So
Yeah.
yeah, to me, it was just like, this is Islam. Like, why is there a different word for it? I'm not too sure. Still not too sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think uh, this is it's a big topic, a whole different discussion, but definitely there is a big confusion, misunderstanding that these are two separate things.
Yes,
Even though Ihsan is one part, right? There's Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. So the spiritual aspect is the core, it's the essence, it's the root,
exactly.
right? And that really saddens me that it's such a confusion now. But it just means that if we have that understanding, then we have to do what we can to kind of help others understand the essence of it. And it's not two
Yeah,
separate things. And I think one big thing is that a lot of people kind of stay away from it and are a little bit more cautious is because of the things that they hear, what it's like, or the things that people do, the practices that may or may not be associated with Islam. But that doesn't mean that it's not part of Islam. Like that's the essence of Islam. So that's a whole
right.
different discussion. But I always love when I find other fellow souls that are more inclined to it or they understand it, because then it's just a great way to kind of have more openings and have those conversations. So I, you have a good community on TikTok, and I know you come across a lot of maybe
more negative comments or just a lot of misunderstanding. So how do you approach that, and how do you, what are the things that you kind of come across?
Um, yeah, the things I come across the most are that Sufism is full of bid'ah and its innovation. This is something I probably get at least, I don't know, at least a few comments a day with just saying that. So yeah, that's interesting. And I also get a lot of people saying this has been like a trend very recently. Maybe this is a good sign, but people
Mhm.
say, oh, how Sufism used to be makes sense, but now it's bad or innovation or whatever. So I feel like that's a step in the right direction because maybe people are opening their mind up a little. But
Mhm.
honestly, those are the main things, and obviously, things about hijab, right? So I think that's any Muslim creator, regardless of your presentation, you're gonna get those comments. So for me, I mean, I don't really take, I don't know why, I really don't care for the negative comments. Like, I honestly thank God every day that I don't get affected in that way. Like, it doesn't impact my self-esteem or my faith and what I believe about Islam. So that I'm really, really grateful for because I know it can be very destructive and detrimental to people. Yeah, it's really unfortunate. And I think the way I dealt with the negative comments, like at first, you want to be reactive. And there's times where I have been, it is what it is. Like, we're
Yeah,
only human.
right.
But I've really reflected on that. And honestly, I've learned so much from these comments, even the negative ones. Like, it's forced me to look into things that maybe I didn't want to look into, and that I was like, oh, they're just haters. They're talking about the dancing in the mosque or what have you. And but it forced me to look into these claims that people were making. And you know what? I discovered a lot of things. I learned a lot about practices that are not Islamic, that
Right.
people who claim to be Sufi are doing. And but who am I to tell those people what they're doing is wrong? And I'm not gonna go to those people and tell them to change their whole career because what they're promoting, like that's not my duty. But I can be aware of the nuances of tasawwuf and where it can get a little tricky. Um, I think a lot of people thought that I believed in those things because I never addressed it. I never said, hey, I don't really believe in occult practices. Like, that's not Sufism to me, but it is to other people.
Hmm.
So because I never explicitly stated that or mentioned it, I think there were a lot of assumptions, and it really made me reevaluate, like, okay, am I talking about those things or am I not? What am I talking about? What is Sufism to me? And yeah, so that's kind of how I deal now with the negative comments. I try to actually, maybe there is something about that comment. There's some truth in what they're saying, and maybe I should look into it. But then there's just trolls, and those people, I find it honestly, sometimes I laugh just seeing, because I'm like, I swear this person is like a 14-year-old, and I just feel more sorry for them than anything else. Because
Yeah.
I wonder what's going on in their life that they feel they need to do that. But anyways,
Yeah. No,
yeah,
I mean, those are some really good points, and I think that's a really healthy way of looking at it. And I mean, naturally, if you're passionate about anything and somebody kind of comes up to you and says something, you're gonna feel a little bit more like, "Hey, what?"
yeah,
But again, it's like instead of being reactive, you have to think, okay, well, everyone's talking from their own perspective and from what they think is right, or what they feel is right, or what they understand. And there's definitely a lot of nuances to it. And I think that's the main thing, right? Like, what does it actually mean? Like, what is, like, for you, what does it mean? What does Sufism mean?
mm. Yeah. It's kind of like what you said. It's the essence. To me, it's the essence of Islam. Like, there's no, our religion is just a set of rules without this. So, and even when you look into Sharia, like every concept or rule, there's something behind it. and usually what's behind it has something to do with tasawwuf, whether that's purification of the ego or the soul, and or good character, all those things. There's something behind it. So I think it's, yes, the essence of Islam, and I think it's what we need in order to fulfill our duties. Like, we need that, because I don't think we'll be able to fully fulfill what the religion asks of us without the essence. And my understanding is that it is embedded in Islam. It's not something, it's not innovation, it's not anything like that as a concept itself, but that it was probably lost in the process of like politicization of Islam. I don't have that much information. It's a huge area of study, but from what I've been able to understand so far, it was lost when Islam became way more political. And my understanding is that tasawwuf is why some people in the world converted to Islam, like way back when, especially in West Africa.
Yeah, that's very true. That is very
so true. I don't think we can just ignore that and throw it out the window. And when I understand tasawwuf, there's like three kind of main words that come to mind for me. Ihsan, like you said, and tazkiyah, which is purification of the heart or soul, whatever people prefer. And then I don't know if I'm saying this word right, but marifa, which is knowledge of God, but
one of
there's
the highest
also
stations.
levels to that. Yeah, exactly. So to me, that's what I think about. And it's like, imagine if you remove that from Islam, like what's left,
Just mechanics. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and it's not to take away from fiqh and Sharia. It's not at all that, because they all go together. But I think when you talk about tasawwuf without mentioning rules, people get very distraught and confused, and because a lot of times that's how people were presented the religion.
Yeah, very, very true. I mean, and I think it's important that there's charlatans everywhere, and I think that's the big damage that's kind of been inflicted upon us. Is there's people who call themselves Sufi, but if you call yourself Sufi, that's not a very Sufi thing to do.
Right. That's all.
Like that's like there's people who just they find something, and then they're like, okay, I'm gonna just be this big person and just fool people, and that's caused so much confusion amongst people, and it makes me so sad, but also it's like, okay, no, we have to clear this misunderstanding. And I think the first step is first understanding what is spirituality and what is that in the context of Islam. Spirituality is our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like when we pray, we have there's the action part, but then there's a part where our niyyah, our intention, our awareness, our khushu. So if we don't have that, and you take that out, all you have is the mechanics, and that's it. So spirituality is, what is that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And it's that constant struggle, right? Like because this is a lifelong process, and that's what Allah's going to ask us. Like, how much did you strive? How sincere were you? Like, you're going to fall, but you're going to get back up, and how many times are you going to do that? You're going to, what is your focus? What is your aim? So that's what the essence is. And then I think understanding, okay, now, like, what is the origin of it? Like, what does it all mean? And where are the different practices? Where does the whirling dervish come in all of this? Like, that's a whole different conversation. But I think definitely one thing to kind of understand is that there is a lot of confusion, and there are people who have added things that may not be part of Islam, and then there's other things that are there. They may not explicitly be, word for say that you can do this, but it's still within the bounds of Islam. Again, that's another conversation, because it would, if we talked about that, this would go on and on. But a lot of people do have the same type of argument or kind of thing that they mention, is that, oh, this is bid'ah, this is shirk. So then, but it's important to understand what is shirk and what is bid'ah, because there's two types of bid'ah. There's bid'ah
Yeah,
hasana, which is the good bid'ah, the good innovation, and
yeah,
then there's innovation which is not good, of course. And of course, everyone is referring to that. But
yeah,
a lot of times people don't know that sometimes there's a innovation that may be good, that wasn't there before, like, the Tarawih prayer, for in
yeah,
Ramadan. Like, I
yeah,
mean, there's so many examples. So I think before we put labels on things, I think we need to understand ourselves what it is, what's the essence of it, and then what is
yeah.
shirk? Because there's 12 types of shirk. So which shirk are you
Right.
what are you talking about? So I think that's something really important to understand. But definitely we need to have that conversation and dive deeper into
Yeah.
that. We are running short on time, but I'm going to ask you, so what feeds your ruh? What feeds your spirit? What are some things that you do to help ground you, bring you back whenever you feel disconnected from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What kind of helps you reconnect and rekindle that relationship?
I think the main thing for me is like outside of the dhikr prayer, those things. The main thing for me is always self-reflection. I really think that's the only way for me personally, to kind of reset, and to check my intentions and things like that. And I think that goes hand in hand with purifying your nafs. So I think self-reflection is something that helps me a lot. Also, sounds super random, but doing like random good deeds for people. I don't know why for me, that's I feel it's so powerful to do that, because it's not always all about you. And I think when you kind of step outside of yourself a little bit, you get perspective. And honestly, anything that helps me kind of challenge my ego. I think that's like the main thing that feeds my soul, is challenging my ego, doing things that maybe are uncomfortable, but I know need to be done, and things like that. So those would be the main things for me.
Wow. And it's like every day we have that battle, right? Between your
Hmm.
nafs and your soul. So it's like, which one are you feeding? That's a constant
Yeah,
battle. And that is what
yeah,
spirituality is. Which one are you feeding at the end of the day?
yeah, I agree. Yeah.
But what are some resources that you would suggest for others to kind of begin and start with in terms of understanding what spirituality is?
So I want to say, read this book, read that book. I think there's all sorts of books you could read.
Yeah.
Um, but I really do think the best resource is the Quran. Like I want to say other books, but to me it's like that's what everything is in there. So I
Yeah.
think it's that, and you have to go in with an open heart. Like you have to read it with the intention of trying to understand, yeah, what does this mean for in a spiritual sense. Um, so it's about your frame of mind going into reading. You can read the same verse 10 times, but that 10th time is going to be the time where you went in with that intention to really understand the spiritual meaning of it. Um, in terms of other types of resources, I think it's always good to take courses. Like there's some really good courses, because some concepts can be a bit challenging to understand at first, especially if you're coming from a background that's very fiqh heavy. It
Hmm.
can be difficult to understand. So I think it's always good to take a course. I took one of the first courses I took was with Dr. Butch Ware, or Bilal Ware, and he's
Yeah.
on Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great resource. I like
He is.
highly
He's awesome.
recommend.
Yeah, mashallah.
um, and then everyone who's like kind of affiliated with him, Adiyinka Mendez, I've
Mhm.
taken some of
Oh,
his
he's amazing.
courses. Yeah, it's specifically about prophets. He made like different I don't remember that course, but it was good. And then um there's also somebody else called My Meditation Mentor on Instagram,
Hmm.
and he's also a very good resource. He does lives every Friday that talk specifically about purification of the heart and soul. So those are like people resources that I would recommend because they're easily accessible. They're on Instagram. You know, people don't necessarily want to read a million books. But if I were to recommend a book that has been really good for me, I would say anything by Imam al-Ghazali and the study Quran has been really good for me because there's essays in the back as well that are like a good introduction, a bit academic, but I think, you know, if you're passionate and you're interested, those can be. Yeah, I think that was pretty much everything in terms of resources. There are a few books that I think are good for, because I think the introduction should always be like purification of the heart. So yeah, that's a book. Purification of the Soul is a really good book. Contemplation by Malik Badri. And yeah, those are the main things I would recommend, like to start off. Just looking into the different types of purification, and I think that can be quite helpful to understand, practically speaking, like what Tasawwuf really is about.
Thank you so much. No, I mean, those are great resources. Some of them are new, so I'm going to look into those. But I loved how you mentioned that just reading the Quran in itself with an open heart and having that niyyah, like asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to open up your heart to the beauty and the realities of the Quran, right? I mean, it's an ocean. You go back and you'll learn something new. And I think just having that intention is so important. Just starting off from there is a great way to just begin that journey, and reading it from the translation if you don't understand Arabic, and then just going on that journey of understanding the Quran and what does it mean and how is it revealed and what are the themes of each, you know, of each section of the Quran. I think that's a really great way to start. And then, you know, we all need teachers, and I think, you know, reading books is really important, and listening to different teachers is also very important. And there's so many teachers out there, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless our teachers, because they are the ones who are the door to Allah and the Prophet ﷺ. So they, you know, we have so much to owe them. And I think one thing to remember is that a sign of a good teacher, a lot of the scholars say, is somebody who embodies the character of the Prophet ﷺ. So somebody who will bring you closer to the Prophet ﷺ. Somebody, of course, you know, if they're bringing you closer to the Prophet ﷺ, they are bringing you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that is the way to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the key to getting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure. And so a good sign of a teacher, if you want to know if this teacher is the right teacher for me, because unfortunately there are a lot of people out there who are teaching Islam, but it is not it's not all of Islam, and a lot of the key points, the essence of Islam is not there. And and that's just an unfortunate reality, that some teachers are just not the right teachers. And so one sign is just, you know, is this teacher bringing you closer to the Prophet ﷺ? Are they embodying those characteristics of gentleness and love and respect? And you know, do they have their sources? Because a teacher is trained, and they have years of training, and they learn from this whole entire chain that goes directly back to the Prophet ﷺ. So I think that's another conversation. We have to have a podcast episode on that, but that's just something to remember. And I'll definitely link some resources in the bio as well. But if you're just looking for quick resources, Celebrate Mercy is a great organization. They invite great teachers. I love Celebrate Mercy. You can check out Seeker's Guidance, Ribat, Rabata. That's a great place, especially for women, for reverts. It's such a great resource. There's the Rahma Foundation. There's the Al-Maqasid, Sheikh Yahya Rodas. He's my favorite. Sheikh Adinka Mendes, he's amazing. And you mentioned him before. He does a great course on YouTube about Islamic meditation. And I think it's like 10 sessions or something like that. But I think it's just really just begin with just reading the Quran, having that intention, and then if you're inclined to reading books or if you're inclined to listening to podcasts, there's so many things out that are out there. Um, and lastly, there's Soul Food by Amjad Darsin. He doesn't, I don't think he has any recent episodes out, but I think he has at least 3 seasons. And that is
Oh,
a great
cool.
podcast because he talks about like the diseases of the heart, you know, and blameworthy and praiseworthy
Mm.
traits. A lot of resources from Imam al-Haddad. So that's also a great resource as well. But do you have any other last tips or recommendations about the importance of self-regulation, awareness, and having discussions like these?
Um, yeah, I think the main thing is that we need to remember emotions are not facts. And that how we might feel about Islam based on our culture or our upbringing might not necessarily be what is factual about Islam. So yeah, that's, and to embrace the discomfort of discovering the essence of Islam and discovering yourself and learning that self-regulation. Um, and yeah, I think the beautiful thing about Islam is its simplicity, but also the intricacies that, like you said, it's an ocean. So just always being open-minded about that, never thinking that the way you do things is the ultimate correct way. And I think you'll be good to go as long as you have that curiosity. And we're told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we need to seek knowledge and be open to learning. So if you have that in the back of your mind at all times, you'll be successful. If you're always trying to grow and improve your connection to God, you'll be successful. So that's what I would say. And I just wanted to throw in there, I can't believe I forgot this podcast. I'm all constantly listening to it. It's called The Witness Within.
The
And
witness
it's
within.
yes, it's a very low key, like there's no Instagram, nothing, but it's with a brother called Musa Muhayyadin.
Hmm.
And I think his teacher was Baya Muhayyadin, not sure, but
Sounds
that
very familiar.
podcast changed the game for me. So if anyone's
Ah,
interested in that, yeah, yeah.
oh my goodness, I'll definitely look that up. I'm always looking for new recommendations. Definitely look that up. One final question. What is your favorite thing about the Prophet ﷺ?
I think, okay, to me, when I think about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I think about his ability to not judge people. And I know that sounds very basic, but you hear so many stories about situations he was in that dealing with people that maybe were not following Islam properly or this, that, and the third. And I think his ability to just put that to the side and still help people was just amazing because it's something that it's very difficult for us to do as humans. Like
Hmm.
probably the most difficult thing is to
Yeah,
see somebody who does something differently to us or something we don't agree with and to still see them as human and still help them. Like huge challenge. So that just tells me that his heart was pure, and that's something that I do want to strive towards is getting rid of that judgment in my own heart and um that pride, the pride that is very toxic to us.
yeah, no, yeah, that's very, very true. The Prophet ﷺ was a mercy to the entire universe. So every
Mm,
aspect was mercy. Like, and everyone,
yeah,
even the people who didn't believe, they couldn't help but love him in some way, some form or another.
yeah.
SubhanAllah. Thank you so much, Sanura, for this beautiful, in-depth conversation. I think it went by way too quick, and there's
I
so
know.
much, like there's so much more that I felt like I wanted to discuss and cover because this is like an endless, like, deep conversation that just you can keep going on and on and on. But thank you so much for your time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and increase in you and increase in your status with Him subhanahu wa ta'ala and for all that you all the gems that you shared with us today. It's really, really helpful. And when I first saw your page, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I love it. And mashallah, you've grown your community and you have so many helpful resources. I really, really love it.
No, same to you. Thank you so much for the chat. Like, I really love talking to people who understand what I'm saying without me having to over explain. And that's very rare. So I'm so grateful for you, and thank you for reaching out. And yeah, I hope that we can stay in touch.
Inshallah,
And
definitely.
thank you also for the resources. Like I did, I'm always open to some, and you shared some that I never didn't even know about. So I'm
Oh,
so
no
grateful for
problem.
that as
Yeah,
well.
I'll send them to you, send them your way. And
Okay,
yeah, and let me know what
awesome.
you think. And I'll definitely check out the ones that you mentioned too. I'm excited. I love new podcasts. So
Same, no, same.
there's one that have you heard of Barca Blue?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, he's amazing. But I'll send you like his entire like all the resources he has. He has a podcast as well. He teaches a course, like a few courses.
Okay,
But I'll send him your way. He's also a great gem of our community. So
awesome. Yeah, send
yeah.
it all.
All right, well, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless your day, and I'm definitely going to be inviting you again because we have a lot more to
Thank you.
discuss, and
I would love
inshallah,
to.
we'll definitely stay in touch. Thank you so much. Jazakallah khair.
Okay. Thank you to you, and have a good rest of your day, and take care of yourself.
Thank you. You too.